2016, and my son, he was about 8 years old at the time, 8 or 9, and he was in the kitchen, and he was worried. And I could tell he was worried, and I was asking him about what was going on in his head. And he kept saying, Mommy, what are we gonna do if Trump wins? I said, what do you mean? He's like, he's gonna make people like me and Daddy leave. Maybe he'll let you stay, Mommy. And it broke my heart. And then in November, I had to wake my child up and tell him he was safe and that he belonged and that nobody could force him or his father to leave this country. And I told myself that I was never gonna feel that way again, that I had not done enough, that I had let people like you in this room advocate for families like mine. And so right after that November election, I went to the Waukesha County Democratic Party meeting and I said, put me to work. I don't care what you want me to do. I will knock on doors. I will make phone calls. I will do whatever you want me to do because I don't ever want to feel this way again. So that's how I first got involved within the Democratic Party. And then I had a big job as an executive at a very large healthcare system. So I've been an executive in a couple of different roles within healthcare, whether that's a Fortune 100 company in private industry or working within population health management within a large healthcare system. And I left that job to actually start my own business. And I called up the Democratic Party again and I said, all right, I've got a little bit more time on my hands. Tell me what you want me to do. And they said, you can run for office. And I said no, multiple times. But it was 2020, and that was when COVID was happening. And I had worked for the CDC. I was an epidemic intelligence service officer, and I watched the Assembly and the Senate not meet for 8 months when people needed leadership. So for talking to my husband and talking to my family, I said, okay, I'm gonna run for office. And so I ran for District 13, and I live in Waukesha County, not exactly a bastion of liberalism, right? And I was able to flip that district from red to blue, doing the hard work, making the phone calls, making sure that I talked to people. And I spent 2 years within the Assembly. And then they redistricted, and I kind of joked that they put a little pin on my house, and then they put me in the reddest district you could possibly find. I don't care if you walked on water, you weren't gonna win it as a Democrat, right? I was like, all right, I guess I'm done. I'm back to healthcare, back to my small business, back to working on policy. And then Mandela Barnes decided to run for Senate, and the lieutenant governor position became available. And somebody called me and said, would you consider it? I said, no. Multiple times. And then I thought about it. And I thought about what I brought to the table. And I said, okay, I'm a suburban mom. I've got 2 kids at home. I've been a working mom my whole life. I did not grow up wealthy. My mom was a teaching assistant for special needs kids. My dad worked fixed telephones for Wisconsin Bell. And the only reason I am here today is because of the support that I have received from the state and the federal government to make sure that I can get the education I needed to succeed. I speak Spanish. This is an area where we want to make sure that we're doing outreach across the state. And being a nurse, I just think it's important that we actually look at prevention as opposed to doing things after the fact. So I thought about all of those things and I'm like, I can be a good partner for Governor Evers. All right, I'll do it. I'm gonna run for office, and we won. By 3 percentage points, which is a landslide in Wisconsin, right? Super excited to be able to do that. And then I thought about what I want to do next. And so I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And Governor Evers wasn't sure what he wanted to do. He might have run for a 3rd term, he might not have run for a 3rd term. But when Trump won that election, I knew. Game on. I am going to make sure we have somebody in office who is ready to fight for our values. And so no matter what Governor Evers was going to do, I was going to run. I was there to support him as his lieutenant governor if he chose to run for a 3rd term, but I was going to run for governor. You didn't have to ask me, you didn't have to say, I didn't have to say no. I was ready to go because I know that we need a leader who's going to fight for our values. And so that's why I chose to run. And I announced my candidacy on my 50th birthday, by the way. Yeah. What a way to knock open the door to your 50s, right? Super excited about that. But I do think that we need somebody who is going to continue on the good work that Governor Evers has done, but also be somebody who can be that fighter against that federal government and what Trump has been doing within Wisconsin and all across the nation. And so that's what I am interested in doing. That's why I'm interested in your support to make sure that we can do this. And I'm just excited to be able to talk to anybody and everybody all across the state of Wisconsin. This will be a 72 county campaign in the primary, because we do not have the luxury of not talking to everybody all across the state of Wisconsin, because the primary comes in August and then we've got to win in November. So we better be introducing ourselves pretty early to folks to make sure that they can do it. And we know what's going to happen on the Republican side. They're likely going to parachute in a billionaire from out of state, which is what they often do, who can self-fund.
Yeah.
I already told you.
Muskie's probably sitting in the wings.
Somebody's doing it. And I already told you, my mom was a teaching assistant, my dad fixed telephones. There's not $1 million somehow sitting somewhere that I can access, millions of dollars that I can access. So I'm gonna do this the right way. I'm gonna do this from the grassroots. I'm gonna do this from the ground up, and I'm gonna get support from all of Wisconsin to be able to do that. So, I'm gonna tell you, we can flip a district in Waukesha County. We can flip a district all across the state of Wisconsin. So that's why I'm running. That's why I'm here to talk to you. And I am happy to answer questions. Also listen to what you guys are hearing out in the community. Because what I want to be talking about, and this is what I hear, I don't care where I am, rural, suburban, urban. I hear about the cost of living. I hear about the cost of housing. I have an 18-year-old son. I would like him to stay in Wisconsin and raise a family, but he's not going to do that if he can't afford it. Cost of childcare, if you can find it, right? That was not a problem for me when my children were small. I had choices. They were expensive, believe me, but I had choices, and now people can barely find it, and it costs more than their mortgage or their rent. Accessibility and availability of Medicaid, or healthcare in general, and expansion of Medicaid, which we would be able to get $1 billion a year from the federal government in matching funds to invest in Wisconsin. Making sure we fully fund our public schools, and we have to restore collective bargaining rights for our unions here in Wisconsin. It's going to raise wages for everybody. So I would love to hear what you guys are hearing out in your community. I would love to answer any questions that you have for me, anything else that you would like to be able to talk about. I am here to listen to you.
I do have a question.
Yes,
I actually
ma'am.
have two, but I'll only bother
It's okay.
with one, 'cause
Yeah.
First, thank you for coming. We very much appreciate it in
Yes.
our small community. Second, as a nurse, we share the same concern. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, we're concerned about healthcare and cost of living and the farmers and education.
Yep.
My question is about healthcare. I'm obviously very concerned about the federal monies that we're losing
Yeah.
because of the big fantastic bill
Yes.
and Trump and his nonsense. Excuse me. What kind of plans and processes? I'm a corporate nurse, so
Yeah.
my brain is into processes and plans.
Yeah.
What kind of plans and processes do you guys have set up obviously to start day one when you're in office,
Yeah.
to offset some of the federal monies that we're going to lose and the concerns about rural healthcare?
So I'm very worried about rural health. We've already had places closed, hospitals
Yeah.
closed within Wisconsin, and with these Medicaid cuts that are coming, and of course they kind of put them after the midterms, the
Mhm.
biggest cuts, except for the subsidies on the exchange. People are going to see that right away, and that's our small business owners. Those are the folks who are trying to get their insurance on the exchange because they're not part of a larger organization or business. They're going to see that right away, that those subsidies have been cut. So that's going to be a problem. Number one is we got to focus on revenue, right, for Wisconsin, because we're losing some of these dollars, and having $1 billion a year in for Medicaid expansion matching funds is going to be able to help us to be able to raise reimbursement rates for Medicaid across Wisconsin, so that we can have a little bit of wiggle room there. I'm not going to lie to you, if they are going to cut to the bone like they've been talking about without us pushing back, there is no way that the state of Wisconsin and philanthropy can backfill every federal dollar.
267,000 people. I mean,
It's enormous.
Yeah.
It's enormous, and there's just no way that we can do it. So we have to have a two-part strategy, which is, yes, trying to pull in revenue to the state of Wisconsin, trying to make sure that we are looking at our economy in a way that makes sense, that we are giving dollars to folks who need it for those subsidies, whether that's childcare, whether that's healthcare, and being able to get those dollars in the door. But we also have to be able to push back on the federal government and our federal representatives, because they are voting for this. They could stop this at any time they wanted to. They are not powerless to stop this. They are not. You didn't perhaps, but people voted them into office to do this job, and they should have the power within Congress and within the Senate to be able to actually push back against the president when he's doing some of these things that clearly, like, they voted to appropriate this money, and he's cutting it out, and there's like no pushback whatsoever.
They voted to trash seniors
and veterans
and indigent.
Children, food assistance for kids, like literally taking food out of children's mouths to be able to have a billionaire pay for their 4th yacht, right? I mean, that's what we're doing here, and it's even with all of those cuts, we're still in a worse place financially in terms of the national debt than we were before. So we're not helping people, we're not preventing things from occurring, we're not helping to make sure people have stable housing and childcare and healthcare, and we're in a worse fiscal position than we were. So it doesn't make fiscal sense to do what they're doing, and it's not the right thing to do for our communities.
So the second part to that question, as an add-on, would be, how are you calculating for the far rural and the poverty, the farmers' kids and all the poverty in far rural? Is there a plan for them?
Yeah,
when the buildings start to close and they have to, somebody in Surin has a heart attack and they got to go an hour and a half to south of Green Bay.
So one of the things that we want to make sure that we're working on is that we have broadband access everywhere, because if we're going to have buildings closed, then telehealth it's not going to fix the heart attack, right? But it is going to fix some of those preventive services that we can have. We can do telehealth in a way that makes sense. That's actually one of the bills that I authored when I was in the Assembly, to make sure that we cover that, particularly on Medicaid. So that is one area that we're going to have to do, but we're going to have to look very closely on what we can do in terms. We already have an OBGYN shortage across the state, so people are traveling hours to get to a hospital to have a baby. Hours to have a baby. I don't know about you, but my babies came a little faster, and I would not have made it. Yeah, the second one came a little faster. I would not have made it if I had to go for hours to have a baby. And so, those are the kind of things we're looking at, and to make sure that we can address all of those things. But I do think if we can focus on some of the revenue generation that we have left on the table with the Republican-led legislature, that is a way that we can be fiscally responsible and address some of the needs of rural communities.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Yep.
I have a question about any ICE activity happening in Wisconsin. I mean, we have a number of farms here that have Hispanic workers.
Yep.
We have meat packing plants here. I know in southwest Wisconsin, there's chicken processing plants. Have we at this time, or do we anticipate this going to happen?
I imagine every state is going to have some level of ICE activity, and whether that is in rural areas. They have seemed to have been focused not on the criminals, but the people who are easiest to be able to pick up.
Optics.
Well, I'm thinking the people that were picking whatever strawberries was California. I mean, there was a lot of agricultural workers.
I've been talking to manufacturers who they've lost a ton of employees and cannot find them because either some of them left because they're not feeling safe in the state, or they didn't have the proper documentation when they looked at it again. So yeah, we're gonna have some issues there, and as governor, again, my husband is an immigrant from Mexico, so it is something that's very personal to me in terms of just looking at somebody and being able to pick them up. I'm worrying about my own children, and I'm the lieutenant governor of the state of Wisconsin, right? I'm worried about my kids having a last name of Rodriguez and maybe looking Latino, and somebody picking them up, and what they need to tell those immigration agents if somebody picks them up, and clearly they're citizens, right? So that makes me concerned. I can't imagine how terrifying it is for other families right now, particularly if they have green cards, or they're trying to renew their green cards, or trying to get their citizenship now. yeah, I think that would be really scary for folks. And they are picking people up who've been here for 30, 40 years with nothing really on their record, and they're coming in to maybe replace a card, or they're coming in to renew a green card, and they're picking them up because they're easy, because they want to meet these numbers, and so they're not focusing on criminals, because those people are going to be underground. They're going to be difficult to find, and so they're just trying to meet numbers, so they're just picking up anybody who kind of looks like they might be here without, without documentation. So that's very frustrating to me.
I kind of want to go back to what she was asking, and if you could explain how explain how you would deal with our current legislators, their
Yep.
refusal to do anything. How are you going to deal with them?
You mean
So-
Wisconsin Assembly?
Yeah, and Assembly and Senate, right now, they're both Republican-led at the moment. We will flip the state Senate. I'll bet you $1 on it, we will. We're gonna flip the state Senate. State Assembly is gonna be harder but doable. We have to keep the seats we have, flip 5 more. 4 of them were within a percentage point the last election cycle when Trump was on the ballot. So we get the right candidates, doable, but harder. Still gonna be narrow margins. But they're going to be purple districts that Republicans win. So putting pressure on them to say, why aren't you voting for this? Making sure that their constituents know they're leaving $1 billion on the table every year by not expanding Medicaid, when over 65% of Wisconsinites want us to do it. That includes Republicans.
And it's the right thing to do.
And it's the right thing to do, and it's fiscally responsible. So if they're supposedly a party of fiscal, which I don't believe clearly, because the federal government is going to be in an enormous amount of debt, why would we not bring in this revenue? And we have not brought in this revenue for 10 years. For 10 years, we have not expanded and brought in these dollars. And so putting some pressure on those districts, because before, when we were super gerrymandered, right, you have very red districts and very blue districts. And so if I'm in a really red district or a really blue district, I'm not worried about losing my seat to the other party. I am worried about losing my seat to somebody who's either to the right of me or the left of me, right? But if you've got more purple districts, which we have, and that's the district that I represented, you're worried about losing your seat. And so you have to actually look as if you are responsive to what your constituents want. And they want us to expand Medicaid. They do.
Yeah, I have a question. First off, I'd like to thank you for coming here to Shawano. Second, since the 2024 election, we have seen the approval ratings of Democrats nationwide plummet off a cliff. I think right now they're down to like 30%. It's not very good at the moment.
Terrible.
So my question to you is, what do you think is the main reason for the Democrats' abysmal approval rating at the moment? And how would your campaign help to improve the Democrats' image among Wisconsinites?
Great question, and I've seen those polling too. I think it's terrible. I think part of it is coming from some of our most ardent supporters who want to see more life and fight in our party. And that they're seeing what's happening at the federal level and are very, very concerned and aren't feeling like anyone is fighting for them. And so that's what I think we can do to be able to have that message go out there to say, this is what we're fighting for. Because if you talk about values, and I live in Waukesha County. I have an uncle who lives in St. Croix County, right? That's even redder than Waukesha County. If you talk about values, if you talk about what we stand for as Democrats, if we break it down, we actually agree probably on 90% of the stuff, right? We do. You get into some of the cultural wars maybe, but I mean, other than that, we agree on these things. I can hear people, even wealthier people around me in Waukesha talking about how their kids can't afford a house. And they're worried about it. In Wisconsin, and I imagine, that we would be able to have that message that gets out there to talk about some of these issues that resonate with folks all across the state. The other thing that I think that we've done as Democrats is we've focused a lot on the voting centers, which is, we can't ignore them. They're big economic engines, Milwaukee and Madison, And we've ceded ground to the Republicans and said, okay, well then you get the rest of rural Wisconsin, right? I don't think we have that luxury to do that, and I think that we have voters all across the state that are looking for somebody that's gonna present solutions to problems.
North of 29's feeling lost, frankly.
I mean, really, they're looking for people who are gonna present solutions. So making sure that I am committed to a 72 county strategy to talk to everybody, knock on as many doors as I can, go to as many meetings as I can, even if there's like 7 people there, right? At least we are showing up and talking about the kind of things that we need to do. And it was really interesting, actually, I was reading on the recombobulation area. I don't know if you guys read that. I don't know, Dan Schaefer. Anyway, so it was a woman who's a county party chair, and she was talking about how we don't have to wait to start working in our communities. And I see that most often in some of our rural parties, is that doing food drives, when there's a disaster, coming out as the party to say, look, we're here to help you to be able to go through, to help you through this. And that's what I see, particularly across rural Wisconsin, but everywhere across Wisconsin, is we're there to help our neighbors regardless of party, right? Like the floods in Milwaukee and West Dallas were devastating. I cannot tell you how awful that was. Working class neighborhoods where the water literally blew down the wall to their basement. 9 feet of water.
Yeah.
So their basement completely flooded, plus their first floor.
Yeah.
And these are working class neighborhoods, right? And you're talking about houses that only cost maybe $250,000 to purchase, and they're getting quotes for $250,000 to fix those walls. Like, who can afford that? Who can do that? Like, these are the kind of things that we need government for, right? And then we need our federal government as well to do that emergency declaration for that area. But yeah.
Other questions? Other questions, Sarah?
Yes, ma'am.
We're losing farms
Yeah.
at a very high rate. Is there anything more that we can do, or you can do, to help keep some of the generational farms still operating and not being gobbled up by corporate?
By corporate. It's one of the areas that I'm interested in looking at more broadly. In fact, one of a farmer that I visited talked about that, about if there's anything we can do for like monopoly type of legislation in Wisconsin, like you can only be, or whatever, that kind of thing, or non-compete kind of things.
Mhm.
I don't know the answer to that, because it's a big challenge, but what we want in Wisconsin is we want to keep those generational family farms, because it's better for the environment, right? It is, it's a business that people want to get into. There's actually, people are wanting to start farms more and more. It's very difficult to get the land, which is very, very expensive for them to start. So are there, creative and unique solutions that we can do as a state to address what you're talking about? And one of the things that I would commit to is, okay, I'm a nurse by background. You want to talk about healthcare? I could probably talk to you about that for like 7 hours. Like literally, like I will never be done talking about healthcare, right? But I need experts around me who are going to talk about what are the solutions for family farms in Wisconsin. Because I think there are creative people all across the state that see what's happening on the ground. And that's why I want to hear from people to say, hey, have you thought about X? Have you thought about doing this in terms of making a solution? And so I'm committed to having people around me who are smarter than I am about these types of things.
There is
So
one
we can do that.
thing I will bring up, because
Yeah.
I have talked to some of the local farmers and even some of their kids. One of the things is some of the regulations
Okay.
that are in place right now is making it very difficult for them to become organic.
Oh, okay.
And there could be some changes in those laws that could help some of those, because generational farms are obviously smaller.
Yeah.
That could help them establish organic farming to keep them on that family property.
Okay. Yeah. And if that's something in the state, it's something that we could look at as well, if it's a state reg as opposed to a federal regulation.
So we've hit on healthcare,
Yeah.
and we've hit on farmers, and you touched on cost of living.
Yeah.
We need education.
Yeah. Education? Is that
Yeah.
the last one?
Lots of things.
Health.
Health, farmers,
Yep.
cost of living.
I've been thinking about this a lot.
Yeah.
My neighbors just retired, but he's a dairy farm.
Yeah.
And he's done well, but it's hard going work.
It's hard work.
people in the occasional helper,
Yeah.
college jobs.
Yeah.
They don't know what vacation means.
No. My grandparents were dairy farmers, so was my uncle. Now he calls himself a gentleman farmer because he doesn't have any animals anymore, and he's also in his 70s, so he's semi-retired, but he still farms. But yeah, you don't know what vacation is. Yeah. I think my mom grew up in Wisconsin, so rural, she went to a one-room schoolhouse through 8th grade. So she was between Bosstown and Sugar Grove in Richland County. And that's where she grew up. And then my grandparents, they sold the family farm and they moved to the big town of West Salem. And if you know where West Salem is, you don't, because it's so small, it's not a big town, right? It's just a joke. Like, yeah, it's getting bigger though, it's getting bigger, it's outside of La Crosse. But I mean, and I grew up going to my uncle's farm over the summers, and we were expected to work when we were there. I was not a great farm girl. They just laughed at us all the time. I mean, they just thought that was the funniest thing they'd ever seen in their entire life, me trying to do something like that, but yeah.
So I guess the last thing I can think of for our group anyway, from these guys' committee standpoint would be education.
Yep.
I guess one of my concerns personally would be they're taking away federal funding. So my first thought, again, process corporate management wise, is they're gonna go right for my property taxes, which I can't afford.
Yep.
Do we have other plans and other processes in place to try and find funds
Yes.
to feed in before it eats away at like our personal property taxes and budget?
Yeah, that's unsustainable,
Yeah,
right? It's an
just not.
unsustainable process that we have today, which is everybody is voting to increase their property taxes to help the public schools, and it's an unsustainable process. And so increasing funding for public schools has been a priority of Governor Evers. It will be a priority for me. And again, I think there could be some revenue generation that we could figure out how to apply to public schools.
So
And I will
shifting
use,
to offset?
well, I will use Colorado as an example. So Colorado actually legalized marijuana, and they put all of their tax dollars into public schools.
I lived in Oregon when it was legalized in Oregon, and the money that pumped in was amazing.
And every single state around us, like Governor Pritzker thanks us every time for all of the Wisconsin tax dollars that are there. Now, I'm a nurse, I absolutely understand, like, it concerns me getting it in the hands of kids and making sure everybody understands the risks of it, but alcohol is also a risk.
It's actually more socially
So-
and medically appropriate than alcohol.
So I think there's a way that we can regulate it appropriately so it doesn't get in the hands of kids, and that we can actually generate some revenue in Wisconsin, because we're gonna have to focus on revenue. Yeah.
So you would sign a bill that would legalize weed?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would, yeah. As long as it didn't have any, like, red pills in there or whatever, that they're
No,
trying
that's-
to make it so it, certain people can't, whatever.
I have one more.
Yeah.
I have a question about education as
It
well.
is, yeah, particularly with special
I
needs
grew up in
kids. So
Minnesota.
the reimbursement
Minnesota,
for
Wisconsin,
special
Iowa,
needs education is
all
higher.
three states that were top.
than it is in public schools.
And
And so it's a huge
it's
issue
smaller
to be able to
um,
manage that.
my
And to have
concern,
two separate education
other than saving
systems is
democracy,
unsustainable. We're gonna have to figure out how we can.
Yes.
That's such an argument that
A lot of the federal dollars
Thank you.
are
And I feel
for
like
lower income schools, which
when
are
the
a lot
Walker
of rural
goes
schools.
in,
Didn't know.
teachers.
That's where the federal dollars come in, but it also talks about how do we address
we've got
inequity
teachers in the
across like
family.
different
I know
school
what
systems, and that
teachers
includes kids with special needs,
I
kids with
trust the
disabilities.
teachers that are
How do we make sure that
but I can't
we're
say
doing what
that
they,
my neighbors
that we are
feel like
applying their plan appropriately, and
Yeah.
the federal government doesn't just move that.
Yeah.
So, trying to make sure that we as a state,
My dad was
if they're not right,
My mom was
then how do we put ourselves in the line as well? And, it's gonna be too hard for like my mom would never remind him here, don't tell. She's a teaching assistant for special needs kids. And we honestly, we with both chambers, Trump or we
Amen.
never, I like to think I have a confidence. She does live with me. She just turned 80 and she makes dinner every Sunday. They're lovely. The only school you have here is, I mean, as far as I know, I do, I agree, but.
I don't know that I've really heard
the
honest
public school
statement
is
as
the
far
home of
as
the
what
community.
voucher money
And
goes to
so,
kids.
and
there's
rural
what-
spaces continuously vote to increase their private.
Yeah, it sounds like it's an incredibly
And
imbalanced
they're,
system.
traditionally represented by public kids. So the reimbursement for special education is higher, something that doesn't benefit their voucher school. So making sure that we, and so that, it's a huge issue to be able to manage that. And to have two separate educational systems is unsustainable. We, again, we're gonna have to figure out, how we can manage what we have in Wisconsin,
We
understanding
have,
that
there's
we're
a,
federal
obviously,
funding.
well, you know.
A lot of the federal dollars that come in are
Huge
for
disparity
lower income
in
schools, which includes
healthcare
rural
and
schools.
economics
No.
and infrastructure.
That's where the federal dollars come in, but it also talks about how do we
What is
address
in your plan
inequities
to do?
across like
What can we
different
do
school
to
systems,
help
and that includes
with,
kids with special needs,
American
kids with disabilities. How
Yeah,
do we
that's
make
a great question.
We're doing, we have had dollars in applying their plan appropriately at the federal level, it's specific that. So, trying to make sure that we as the state, with, if they're not housing and infrastructure, then how do we, that, we had a grant program that looked at, but it's gonna be to all of the different houses getting weatherizing them. Here, it needs to make sure that they met code, because sometimes on, rural, we honestly, we flip both chambers. Or we flip both chambers and we try to make sure that we got folks, because I mean, elections do have consequences. And we have to, particularly speak in rural areas, because governors aren't going to rural kids, right? They're not. The only school you have here is, I mean, as far as I know, I don't know what Shaw, but, most rural places, the public school is the public
You know,
school.
clinics and.
And so, and rural spaces continuously vote to increase their private, yes ma'am, on their public schools. And they're, traditionally represented by, who consistently vote for, something that doesn't benefit their community. So making sure that we explain that in a way that's simple and clear.
Tribal lands are also governed by the federal government.
So I have one last question, I promise I'm not done.
But I would like to see the state.
We have, there's a, obviously, well, you know, Lieutenant Governor, you know, there's a huge disparity in healthcare, in economics, in infrastructure, around the reservation for Native Americans. What is
trying
your
to
plan to do, what can we do to help lift,
north of here.
Native
Like,
Americans?
where could you attack a couple different?
Yeah, it's a great question. We have had dollars in the budget for quite some time for, all of the tribal across Wisconsin
On how
to
they
be able to help
approach this, because
with
the private
particularly
sector
housing
is
and
coming in,
infrastructure. That we had a grant program that looked at, all of the different houses and weatherizing them to be able to.
But it's also the
they
mega
met
farms
code.
are doing the same thing.
Sometimes
They're drying up,
Yeah.
they're drying up lakes
Yeah.
in northern Wisconsin by sucking up all the groundwater.
Code, and
Yeah.
they-
There's a lot of that.
And the DNRs not allowed
Got issues with
to do anything about
So
it.
helping
Yeah.
with that.
And are you gonna allow the DNR to talk about climate
Governor and I
change?
meet with.
Since
the heads
Walker took that away,
of the
disallowed
tribal
that?
nations. Well, and then we just had a recent, court decision that, the
Clinics and.
Republicans committees had not allowed the different secretaries to implement rules. Yes, ma'am, so we just had a recent Supreme Court decision that, you know, like, right, you've already appropriated these funds, right, so we get to set the rules for what that looks like. You can't step that back or not release the funds until you've decided on the rules, because they held them for years, years. So that is one thing that's positive.
Tribal lands are
And
also
moving forward,
governed by
Governor Hughes has
the federal
given that
government.
directive,
There's a
he
lot
basically
of
said, look, I wanna make sure that we can do what Wisconsinites asked us to do, and what the legislature has actually voted for us to do, which is appropriate funds for these particular initiatives.
Putting in
And
these
we are gonna
testing
follow
wells
rules
where
on that.
they're testing on tribal land. Well, the DNR is so seriously shorthanded, just
Yeah.
like our police departments, our county sheriff's department, and that because Republicans are not releasing funds to attack unity, diversity, we get into rural America. You know, I would have a situation with the mega farms where there are different guys who are out over roads that for decades are on how they approach this, because the private sector is coming in. I think, you know, wanting the permit kind of, reined in, I guess would be the word I would have. programs for it. They become so big and then.
But it's also the mega farms, they're doing the same thing. They're drying up, they're drying up lakes in northern Wisconsin by sucking up all the groundwater. And the DNR is not allowed to do anything about it. And are you gonna allow the DNR to talk about climate change? Since Walker took that away, you disallowed that?
Well, I mean, we just had a recent, parts of bridge up that, that's not the first time I've heard it going, but the Republican committee sometimes does not allow the different secretaries to implement rules. And so we just had a recent Supreme Court decision, and they're saying, no, like, you've already appropriated these funds, right, so we get to set the rules for what that looks like. You can't step that back or not release the funds until you've decided on the rules, because they've held them for years and years and years. So that is one thing that I think.
I give you a lot of credit.
And moving forward.
And I appreciate you being here on the World Community.
Look, I wanna make sure that we can do what the
I'm concerned
Wisconsin
about
have asked us to do, and what the legislature has actually voted for us to do,
You know,
to
not just
appropriate
in
funds for these particular initiatives, and that we are gonna
all the
follow
money
rules on that, so I think
yeah.
that's good.
Well, the DNR is so seriously short-handed,
know
just like our police departments, our county sheriff's department is. And that because
person like Trump,
Republicans are not
who
releasing funds into the
who
community,
he
of course,
is,
when you get into
keeps
rural
getting
America,
more and more money.
we have a
How many times
situation
has he
with
gone
mega
vacant?
farms where they're hauling manure all over the
Seven.
roads that
Yeah. Yeah, so how
the
did,
coins.
why do people support
DNR, I think,
someone
needs to
with his character?
kind
Yeah.
of
No, I don't think any of this.
Nobody knows that.
Yeah.
$4
I don't think poor Sarah's gonna be able to answer that
So
one.
I'm talking from a bigger perspective.
Just
And that's what-
recently, though, we're talking
you're
about
bringing
water
it in
usage, from
Wisconsin.
the
And, I
aquifers.
really wish
They
you
went
all
ahead and
the
made it
success.
illegal for people to rock hound big streams.
Did we miss
And
anything?
they're blocking medications to arrest people, picking stones.
Yeah, you can't, well, we've seen that in other governors, right? We've seen that with, we've seen that with Governor Walz, we've seen it, with Pritzker, we've seen it with Moore. I think, they have the first very public states, Walz as much, but, Pritzker and Moore
And I
does,
think it even
and of course
encroaches
Gavin
on.
Newsom.
Yeah, we can do some, gotta ask. I mean, are you good with all
I
of
am
this
fine with
crazy
it. I
craziness?
think it is funny. I think it is putting a mirror in front of the behavior that we're seeing.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me
Yeah, I
how
give you a lot of
people are
credit.
losing their minds over it when it's like,
Yeah, I
yeah,
appreciate you
the
being
president is doing the exact same thing. He's just parodying him. Like, I just think that that's, it wouldn't be what I mean, I don't know that I would be as funny, but yeah, it's funny.
Well, I
It's-
think-
And I think that's what people wanna see. We wanna see a little life, we wanna see a little fight in our party.
I think we wanna see people fighting harder than Trump as far as fighting
Yeah.
that part.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a big one of those, but that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, I believe my heart is really real.
I agree.
Families like they're talking about
Seven.
The
people
Bible's
that
intention
have
is
grown
to
up.
coin and
Yeah, so how
their
do,
coins.
why do people support someone with his character? I don't think any of us could.
Nobody knows that.
Yeah.
$4.
I don't think poor Sarah's gonna be able to answer that
So
one.
I'm talking from a bigger perspective.
Yeah. I think there's dignity in working. And I would say that I haven't met a Wisconsinite who wants a handout. I haven't met one. Nobody wants it, what they want is they just want to be able to get on their feet, right? And be able to have. Yeah, you can't, well, we've seen that in other governors, right? We've seen that with, we've seen that with
I
Governor
guess the
Walz, we've
definition
seen
of
it,
fighting
with Pritzker, we've seen it with
But,
Moore.
I
and
have several
they
major
have
concerns.
very
My top
loose
one is voting rights.
states,
But
not Walz as much, but,
past that,
Pritzker
I have a very
does,
big
and of course
concern
Gavin
about
Newsom.
Yeah, we can do some, gotta ask,
Um,
I mean, are you good with all
I
of
am
this
fine with
crazy
it. I
craziness?
think
and
it
I'm really.
is funny. I think it is
How
putting
would
a
you
mirror
address
in
the
front
special
of the
needs?
behavior that we're seeing right now.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me how people are losing their minds over it when it's like, yeah, the president is doing the exact same thing. He's just parodying him. Like, I just think that that's, it wouldn't be what I mean, I don't know that I would be as funny, but yeah, it's funny. And I think that's what people want to see. We want to see a little life. We want to see a little fight in our parties.
I think we wanna see,
become adults.
people
And
fighting
it pays for
harder
things
than
for
trying to
them.
start.
It pays for wraparound.
fighting. That's
Yeah.
what part of it.
Yeah,
he's a big one. That's what we're looking for.
Yeah, everybody, my heart is really in the middle.
I agree.
You know, families like you're talking about, the people that.
Voting rights
have
for
grown
sure,
up
one of the
in
areas
rural,
that,
You know, we are people.
I
that
authored
care.
was, automatic voter registration, you get your driver's license. Don't even have to have an issue with it, right? Like, so my son, he turned 18, I took him to vote for the first time. It was a lot
But
of
we
fun.
can't just
Um,
hear everything, and people-
His girlfriend's a year Yep. older.
and,
I think there's
we
days that
see
not work.
it,
And I was
that
like,
I
okay, I
haven't
none
seen
of
it.
Wisconsin, come down, right? We're gonna do this, right? But if nobody just be on it, what they want is they just wanna be able to come in, you already have it, and be able to have the resource eligible to vote. Why can't we have automatic voter
So,
registration?
I guess the
And
definition
then we
of
were
right.
able to get the drop boxes back.
But,
That was from
I have several
Again,
election, one,
elections
voting
matter,
rights.
and
But-
so making sure we can do that.
Past that,
Pushing
I
back
have very
on
little
Trump and
concern about
his
disabled children
idiocy
that
with
attend our
mail-in
Saves
ballot.
Act. Saves Act. Been
I would
grossly
tell you
underfunded
that,
for
so I had,
years.
when I, so I moved around,
And
I
I'm
grew up here
really
because we
concerned
were
about
about,
that.
my kids were small,
So,
so 6 months.
how would
old,
you
we were in
address
Colorado.
the
And at the
special
time,
needs and
the
very
special
schools?
needs funding right now, it was almost 100% mail. Were able to didn't need an excuse, didn't need anything. It would show up at my door, right, in the mail, with explanations of the different pieces to it. I had time to look up the judges, because half the time I didn't know who the judges were, and I was like, and you don't wanna get to the voting booth and go, and I don't wanna vote for somebody who I haven't, I would leave it blank because I had no research. And so having that show up at my house, become just able to throw that in the place for services for that, and it pays for wraparound things and so making sure that we have time to have search stuff. You're like, oh, what is this, amendment? What is this piece that they're trying to do? And it would have like explanations, and you could look it up yourself. Voting rights, for sure, one of the areas. So I really thought that was super valuable. And I authored was, automatic voter registration. When you get your driver's license, and then I got to Wisconsin, don't even have to have an issue with it, right? Like, so my son, he turned 18, I took him to vote. Well, what are we voting on today? I was like, I know we vote today, and I'm like, oh shoot, I gotta figure this out. And I'm like dragging this thing in there, so. Right? We're gonna do this, right? But if it would just be on renewing your driver's license, or it would just be when you come in, you already have the documentation saying you're eligible to vote. Why can't we have automatic voter registration there? And then we were able to get the drop boxes back, that was from our Supreme Court again. Election, because it's compulsory, right? Or it is in New Zealand, yeah, so making sure we can do that. I'm not suggesting that. Don't put that down, 'cause that's not, no, but it is interesting. I was just living there, and they like, so I moved around a little bit, grew up here. Yeah, it was small, it was like 6 months or 2, I was in Colorado. And at the time, they're 18, 15 now, it was almost 100% mail-in. Didn't need an excuse, didn't need anything. It would show up at my door, right, in the mail, with explanations of the different pieces to it. I had time to look up the judges, because half the time I didn't know who the judges were, and I was like, and you don't wanna get to the voting booth and go, oh gosh, I don't wanna vote for somebody who I haven't, I would leave it blank because I hadn't done my research. And so having that show up at my house, and then just be able to throw that in the mail and have it go back was the easiest thing ever for like a working parent to do. And you had the time to research stuff. You're like, oh, what is this, amendment? What is this piece of? Yeah, I think with the Medicaid, I have like explanation, so you could look it up yourself, or ask my dad and these things. And so I really thought that was super valuable. Life, worked on the Friday when I got diagnosed with my mom, and then I got to Wisconsin in the 60s. And I lived driving past my mom, so like, but he lived with me. Oh, what are we voting on today? I was like, I know we vote today, and I'm like, oh shoot, I gotta figure this out. And I'm like dragging the kids in there, And it was the most difficult, but I think we can make that work for everybody to have access. Like to try, I knew to qualify. And it was, and my parents do not have complicated finances. They're not like investing in a million things, right? They have very simple finances. And it was one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do. try to get the services that he had earned, not only through the VA, but, through Medicaid. It's compulsory, right? And so it is in New Zealand, yeah, it's fund or something, right? I'm not suggesting that, I'm not, don't put that down, 'cause that's not, no, but it is, just living in it is so expensive, because you have to already
Talk a lot about Medicaid tonight,
Yeah.
and one of the things that's kind of on.
Pregnant women, yes.
Sorry, pregnant patients.
Pregnant patients, yes, but, yeah, but seriously, that is who's on Medicaid. And Wisconsin, you must be really embarrassed.
Children.
So, okay, so we have an expanded Medicaid, and now 41 other states have done it. Every other state, besides 2, has expanded Medicaid for 12 months postpartum.
They need the help, because.
Us in Arkansas have not expanded for 12 months postpartum.
Arkansas.
Us in Arkansas.
Arkansas.
It is shameful and embarrassing, and we have one of the highest.
Against the law.
Yeah, I think with the Medicaid, I mean, I will tell you, for, after all the times my dad in the country served during Vietnam, like, the disparity is huge. Worked on the Friday. And in 2016. And he lived with me, my mom still lives with me, but he lived with me until he passed away, right, about 6 years ago. So he did everything right, served his country, worked, he did all the teaching, and at the end of his life, he did Medicaid. And it was the most difficult thing I have ever had to do, like, to try, I knew to qualify.
Recommended that so
And
many
it
times.
was, and my parents do not
Salary to increase.
they're not like investing in a million things, right? They have very simple finances. And it was one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do, to try to get the services that he had earned.
It's unbelievable, not
from
for
the VA. But, and here's the thing, it passed in the Senate, and so when people have this rhetoric that people are on just one no, that was it, everybody else, all Republicans voted for it, and the number that is signed on to the bill on the assembly side, it is so offensive, just because the vast majority of bills, every single Democrat signed on to the bill, and several Republicans did, it would have passed. Pregnant women, yes,
Sorry, pregnant patients.
pregnant patients, yes, but yeah.
They wanted to send
Oh,
it
I'm
out.
sorry. I didn't mean to put you on the
No,
spot.
I don't wanna
Maybe
say the
it was
wrong
one
one and then I get in trouble.
No, that's
We
okay.
can find it, we can Google it, but there was just one. Okay, so we have an expanded Medicaid in that 41 other states have done it. So we could have passed it. Every other state, besides 2, has expanded Medicaid for 12 months. I know. That's why we wanna get rid of the speaker, we need to flip assembly, get an Democratic speaker in there. 12 months. But regardless, I do think it's gonna be. Us in Arkansas. It is shameful and embarrassing, and we have one of the highest assemblies, again, even if we don't look at the mortality rates for, African American women in the country. Like, the disparity in the assembly, I understand how broken it is. But I've also worked in private industry, and I understand how you need to work to move goals forward, even when you don't necessarily all agree on each of it. So, I am ready and willing to work with the Senate and the Assembly on anything.
Shameful, and we have recommended that so many times,
So I know it's
on the maternity
pushed
salary
an
rate
hour
to
from
increase,
there. And I would ask,
Medicaid funding.
we appreciate you tremendously.
My
I think
understanding
you're
is that
tremendously
the
qualified.
leader of the
Tremendous, I think you're probably the best qualified.
Assembly will not
Walk
bring it.
around in the-
It will not. And here's the thing, it passed in the Senate, one
What can
negative vote.
we do for
right?
you as rural voters?
Just one no, that was it. Everybody else, all Republicans voted for it. And the number of people who signed early now, money's important. If we're literally pieces of it. Just, I mean, and I say that reluctantly. Every single Democrat signed on to this, frustrating to see that Republicans did. But if there are elected officials in the area that you think I should be reaching out to, who.
They wanted to send it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put you on
No,
the spot. Maybe
I
it
don't wanna
was
say
one
the
of
wrong
ours.
one and then I get in trouble.
No, that's okay.
We can find it, we can Google it, now, there was just one, but it would have passed in the Assembly, that would be helpful.
No,
So we could have passed it, but that would be helpful, because then being able to show. That's why we wanna get rid of the speaker, we need to flip assembly, get a Democratic speaker in there. But regardless, I do think it's gonna be narrow margins, no matter who's in charge. Senate, that we're listening to, Assembly's an event, or even if we don't flip it up to a narrow margin, you're gonna want somebody who is able to kind of.
We are taking volunteers.
Yeah, I understand how it works. Yeah, how broken it is. But I've also worked in private industry, and I understand how you need to work to move goals forward. That's necessarily all on the process of it. Yeah, I am gonna reach out to the Latino. So, you speak Spanish. I am ready and willing to work. My husband, easily on any. My husband likes to joke, he taught me all the time. I do have to get home to him at some point, just kind of say, do you like my husband 80%
We
of the time?
appreciate you tremendously.
I know, really married 20 years,
Tremendous.
coming
I
up
think
this
you're probably
December,
the
so I
best
figure that's a pretty good percentage, but every once in a while I do. Yes, ma'am.
I know that lady over there had her hand up
Oh, I'm
several
sorry,
times.
yes, ma'am.
I was just going to say that,
So,
you know, in Shawano here,
early
I don't
now,
know how many people
money's important for
are
early
aware of the
pieces of it.
daycare
Is- I mean, and I say that
situation
reluctantly.
But there's a
because it's
daycare.
frustrating to
There
me
was
that
a
that's what it
daycare.
means.
right next to my
But
house.
if there are elected
And it
officials
closed.
in the area that you think I should be reaching
And
out to,
that's
who
like
are,
25 to 30 kids who now have nowhere to go.
with us, who would be
You know,
willing to
and what are they gonna do? And I think a lot of it was because
not to
they
use not
took
aligned,
the money
push
away.
me in that direction.
You know, they just
That would be helpful.
money.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
these young parents,
But that would be helpful because
You know, who are
then
making
being
probably
able to
minimum
show
wage.
in office
And-
that I have stable.
So then you have to make hard choices,
and they
right?
just like
Then
that,
now- and
close
just
the door.
keep telling me, and then now you're not gonna make the dollars that you were making before, you can't afford it, right? You're gonna have to
Yeah.
figure out family, you're gonna have to figure out something that's new, not safe, right? As if there's any
Yeah.
event or
Well,
anything.
I
so
don't
I
know
can come to
where
you and
these
I-
kids are going to go. There's
Yeah.
nothing in the daycare
There's
town
nothing.
that can absorb that.
We are taking these school years,
Yeah.
we're starting them early elementary school, but
Yeah.
we're not voting out in the spring, so we're starting.
I will tell you that I have talked to more than one couple, across the state of Wisconsin that talked to me about childcare and told me that when they were thinking about getting pregnant. I am gonna reach out to pregnant yet, and I do speak Spanish. Thinking about getting pregnant. They started calling around to childcare. My husband likes to joke, he tells me, isn't that the saddest thing I've ever heard? Because the wait list can be a year. I do. Some people had to, like, they could only find care for 2 days, so then they had to, like, work with their work. I know, really married 20 years, coming up in December, so I figured I'd juggle all of this that everyone's telling you. I did not have this problem. Like,
I know
just
that lady
didn't
over there
when I-
had her
when I
hand up
small- Oh, I'm
several
sorry.
times.
Yes, ma'am. To make ends meet.
I was just going to
But I
say
had
that,
choices of where I could put my kids.
you know, in Shawano here, I don't know how many people are aware of the.
Thank
daycare.
you.
Know that you have a guy.
Yes. One last one, okay.
Right
This
next
last
to,
election cycle was very
and
difficult
it
for
closed.
individuals like me who are
And
trans.
that's like
There were a lot
25
of
to 30
cash.
kids who now have
Didn't see
nowhere to
enough
go. You know, and
support
what
from
are they gonna do?
Democrats.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it was
Talking about it
because
at
they
all, they want
took
such
the money
huge-
away.
Yeah.
You
So
know, it
I
just
firmly
money.
believe that we do not
And
have to.
These are young parents,
To be
you know,
able
who are making probably minimum
Right.
wage.
We just don't,
And-
we don't have.
So then you have to
we
make
can-
hard
we
choices,
can
And they
try
just,
things,
like
then
that,
now, yeah.
close the doors.
And then now, you're not gonna make the dollars that you were making before, because you can't, and sometimes I think you're gonna have
Yeah.
to figure out family, you're gonna have to figure out something that's maybe not as safe. And so, right, as a standard, you don't understand their.
Yeah, well, I don't know
And
where
so
these
trying to make
kids
sure
are
that
going to
we're
go.
talking
There's
about
nothing in the daycare
there's
town that can absorb
We
that.
speak about things in every
It's going to be,
manner, I think
yeah.
it's gonna be important.
Elementary school, but got voted
Another
out.
thing that I would suggest, I will tell you that I have talked to more than one couple, across the state of Wisconsin that talked to me about childcare and told me, that when they were thinking about getting pregnant, not pregnant yet, thinking about getting pregnant, and I thought, they started calling around to childcare to put themselves on the list. That's it. Isn't that the saddest thing I've ever heard? Because the wait list can be a year. And some people had to, like, they could only find care for 2 days, so then they had to, like, work with their work to only do it part-time. And to get a full-time, that I think, or whatever, and they're like, trying to juggle all of this to make sure I'm telling you, I did not have this problem. Like, I just didn't when I had.